can hear destiny calling, calling out my name. I don't need no shield. Now watch me feel. Failure is not
Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes to help your body move. There you go. There you go.
I choose to thrive. I will learn with force, never on my knees. I am not the same. I'm different. I am not the same. Yeah, I am not the
Everything hurts so bad. Excruciating pain. The brain is physically in so much pain. The nerves from my back of my head, through my neck, through my back. All right. So, welcome to the Face of Malpractice. I am your host, Melissa. If you are joining for the first time, welcome. This channel is about sharing interviews with fellow warriors in the psych drug space. It is not just about my story. This is a platform to give others the chance to share their experience too. On TikTok and on my new Instagram, I'll be posting a blend of content from my personal journey with psych drug injury and all the way to educational resources. So don't forget to follow me here on YouTube as well as on TikTok and Instagram to stay updated on a variety of insights and updates. So today we'll be interviewing Henré Rossouw, a 19-year recovering alcoholic and addict and survivor of 14 years of major mental health disorders, overprescription, and severe withdrawal side effects when he started his own journey to health and balance. During his illness, he dedicated more than a decade of studying psychology and psychiatry through scientific literature, clinical trial data, and the DSM-5 handbook, drawing from experience and data to be in a position where he is now able to serve and advise others on their journey to health and balance. So thank you, Henré, for joining us today.
Good to be here, Melissa. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So I really think maybe a good place to start with your journey is why don't you tell us about where you were in your life before it led you to alcohol and drugs?
It probably started when I was 8, where when I first experienced the taste of alcohol. We were at our family beach house for the Christmas holidays, and a lot of the side scenes are sort of vague, but I remember vividly uh, where we had the barbecue area outside. You could see through the sliding door to the bar area that was sort of in the corner. And I, to this day, I can't tell you why I did it, but I did it. So I would sneak to the corner of the bar and then just sort of lay on the side of my head. And so you had the box wine. I don't know if you guys have it with the little tap. Sort of the cheap wine. So I would lay my head down and just have like 3 or 4 quite big sips. And immediately I liked it. And over the course of, let's say, 20 minutes, I did that quite a few times. And then I got caught. My parents and my and the family on my mother's side sort of caught me doing it. And instead of accosting me or something, they thought it was funny. They joked about it. They sort of embarrassed me in a funny way. They were all obviously consuming alcohol, just having a good time. But I remember feeling incredible shame and embarrassment for them not just catching me out, but making a joke out of it. And that was my first introduction to alcohol. I didn't pursue alcohol thereafter because I was only 8. But for some reason, I just knew this is this is good. And maybe it's not the truth, but I feel that a normal 8-year-old would probably not enjoy the taste of alcohol that much. And then over the years, as still not 10 years old, dad would be in the kitchen having a beer. He used to take a sip of the beer and then add some brandy to it. Now, to me, in hindsight, that's sort of a red flag, but I don't know if it's customary over there, but you would, as a child, be like, well, can I have a sip just to be, what does it taste like? And sometimes he would be like, yeah, sure. And so I had a sip at probably still 8, 9, maybe, of the beer mixed with the brandy. Now, maybe wine would be tasty to an 8-year-old, but I don't think beer mixed with brandy would be. And the moment I tasted that, it took me back to that place where I tasted the wine, and I was like, yeah, I don't know why, but this makes sense. Um, and then I obviously abstained from alcohol, being a fairly normal child, slightly reserved, slightly shy, but I would say pretty normal. Normal upbringing. My parents didn't show a lot of affection towards each other, but my brother and I uh, never had any issues with our parents as such. We weren't, we had a pretty regular upbringing up until probably the age of 12, when things sort of started spiraling out of control.
Well, it's interesting that you say like you're 8 years old and you taste it and you liked it. You liked it. Was it that you liked the way it tasted or you liked how you felt? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't recall what I felt like, so
Yeah.
I immediately recognized the taste and thought, this is good. This
Mm,
is good. And I watched a podcast, and I believe, and I might be incorrect completely, but I don't know if you know Steve-O from the Jackass movies.
yeah. Hmm.
Uh, he was on a podcast, and he said something profound. He said, the moment in life where you taste
Mm,
the thing that you are going to marry in terms of addiction, the moment you taste that, your brain immediately registers that. And I think that's what
mm,
happened. And it took a long while before I picked up alcohol again, because like I said, I was a
hmm.
pretty regular child, a bit reserved, a bit shy, but nothing out of the ordinary, not difficult. That changed when I was 12, um, when my father left my mother.
Mm,
Um, and I mean, that was a very, very hard time for myself, my brother, and my mother. I felt uh, obviously abandoned. I was angry,
mm,
cried a lot. My mother cried a lot.
mm,
I wasn't aware, to be honest, about my brother at that stage, how he was processing it. But I
mm,
remember how I was processing it, and it was tough. But again, I didn't go to any substance abuse or anything. I just became more reserved, and in hindsight now, it's obvious that quite severe anxiety has started to creep in at that age. My father did return eventually after a couple of months. Um, but things were never,
Mm-hmm.
things didn't change between him and my mother. And it was only after I turned 40 something when she finally opened up and said, he only came back um, to stay until both of the two sons graduated, and then he would leave again. He didn't. Um, but from the ages of 12 to 14, looking back, I can now see how anxiety and very slight depression started creeping in.
Wow, yeah, I'm really sorry that that's how things played out. It's quite interesting. People don't like, I think parents don't realize their importance of safety. Like you highlighted abandonment, right? You don't even realize that's what's happening to you. You're so young, you don't understand that emotion. I mean, adults don't understand that emotion, right?
No, but I have to say, I also grew up in the 80s, and I know it's sort of a cliche, but things weren't really
Mm,
discussed in much detail. My mother to this day
mm,
is very open, and she speaks or easily. But at that point in time, things were just
mhm,
confusing. And I remember I had to go visit my father every now and again, where he moved to with his new girlfriend, and I absolutely despised going there, seeing him with another woman. I mean,
mm,
I didn't understand marriage, but I knew that wasn't my mother.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, I just hated that. And
mm,
and then, I think my mother thought it well to bring in some sort of religious leader or spiritual type of person. Um, and another thing I recall, I was like 12 years old. My brother and I were sitting in the living room that also faces outside to where my friends were waiting for me in order to, go play whatever, baseball or cricket or whatever. And this person came in and just to cut it short, he basically, I guess, tried to exercise something, but he was so loud that I was so embarrassed that my friends were going to hear what's going on inside the house. Obviously, the
mm,
curtains were drawn, but yeah, that also didn't sit well.
mm.
But yeah, the ages from 12 to 14 was sort of where no one realized what was going on, but looking back, we can now pinpoint that was
Mm.
that was the time when everything started very slowly to unravel.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I don't even like it, and it, I think people, divorce and separation is so common, right? But it, it every single time someone this happens, it impacts the children, right? And it manifests in different ways, right?
Yeah, I look, I don't think I fully grasped what divorce meant even.
Yeah.
I just knew this wasn't how it was supposed to be. I was embarrassed
Yeah.
to be with my friends because
Mm,
they knew dad had left. That was embarrassing.
mm,
Um, and slowly over time, I was a pretty good athlete overall during my high school years, so starting at 14. So when I started looking back, I could, I realized now that even at the age of 14, let's say I had an athletics meet the next day, um, I wouldn't be able to sleep the night before, and I wouldn't be able to eat anything until the actual meet. Now at 14, that's
mm,
okay because you are still pretty young, so your 100 meters and long jump and whatever is quite early in the day. but when I turned 17 and 18 and I started playing for our first team rugby, which is sort of your NFL version, we were like this is the best of the best team in the school. So I wouldn't be able to sleep the night before and wouldn't eat a thing until kickoff, which would be at 4 in the afternoon. And I was always I called it nervous, and today I understand the difference between being nervous and anxiety.
Mm.
Um, so I just always told mom, I'm just nervous. And she couldn't make the adjustment cognitively as well
Mm.
by understanding that nerves does not equate anxiety. Um, so that that period was tough, but again, with inexperience and no knowledge, um, it was just an uncomfortable 4 years. Yeah. Um, but nothing major. But then I obviously graduated high school, and at 18 in our country, you are then legally allowed to consume alcohol. Um, so then um, I studied a degree in computer science, and that's really where the full effect of anxiety and depression, and even hypochondria,
Mm.
which is the weirdest thing, kicked in. Um, I had to drive because we didn't have capital, so I had to drive from our place to. It was not university; it was a private institute. That Cambridge University in the UK sort of
Mm.
brought to the country. So I had to drive about 80 kilometers a day. I don't know how many miles that is, sorry. Um, and I was absolutely convinced that I would be in a car accident and I would die. And I would get to class and I would have these, your typical anxiety attack symptoms. So I was like, if 10 out of 10 would be an anxiety attack, I would be at a 9 for
Mm.
almost the entire day. And then when I got home, I don't know how it happened, but I had a beer
Mhm.
and I felt, okay, I feel sort of
Mm.
okay. And then also at 18, this is probably where the crucial turning point came. I came home one day from class, and my father at that time had a business that he ran from home. So we had a few computers in the office, and I was just playing a couple of games on the computer, and all of a sudden things just sort of went black. And I was like, ah, what is that? And I still, I feel uncomfortable. I feel tense, but I'm playing a game. I'm okay-ish. And then it happened again, and immediately I got scared and I
Mm.
got up. And my father wasn't really the type to talk to about these types of things. So I went to my mom, who was in the bath at that time. I just opened the door and just went in and said, look, I'm going to throw up and potentially defecate myself and also die, probably. I don't know what's going on.
Mm.
And I think at that point, for the first time in her life, she realized my son is having a full-on panic attack.
Mm.
And she gave me half of my father's, it's called Zopivane here in South Africa. I think it might be Zolpidem over there.
Mm.
She gave me half of that. And 10 minutes later, I was sitting on the couch giggling away and thought everything was great and funny.
Mm.
And from that day on, I never went without alcohol and sleeping tablets, which I used to relax, not to sleep. Since the day I was admitted to rehab, not a single day except for one day when I was 21, when I realized we ran out of alcohol. Again, this was 2001. You couldn't get liquor on a Sunday. And I was feeling, because we were partying heavy, we were really heavily partying the previous night. And that Sunday there was no alcohol left. I didn't have any of the sleeping tablets, and I realized I don't know if I'm going to survive this day. I feel like I'm dying. And that's when I realized, actually, and I remember vividly realized that at 21, I was a full-blown alcoholic at that point. But still 4 years. It still took 4 more years before I finally got help.
So 4 years, so to 25 is when you got help.
Yeah, basically the end
Around
of
that.
20, the end of 20, the end of 2005. Yeah.
And
Um,
okay, so you're an alcoholic. It sounds like you're abusing sleeping pills and are there other psychiatric drugs in this as well?
I also then started taking painkillers,
Mm.
opioids, Tramazac, it's called here.
Mm.
Um, so I was just gulping them down. By that time, I was drinking. So the beer helped for a month or so. Then I realized, okay, this is a waste of time. So then I just switched to the harder liquor. Um, and then I started drinking like brandy neat, like literally
Mhm.
glassfuls at a time,
Mm.
whilst taking all of these medications. Um, and then by that time, I had moved out of the house into a place that I owned at that point. And at just before the end, meaning just before the beginning of my
Mm.
stint in rehab, I was consuming every single day a bottle of whiskey neat, uh,
Mm.
as many sleeping tablets as I could get, because I didn't have a prescription, obviously, so I had to steal them,
Mm.
or fake a prescription, which I often did. Hopefully, the police doesn't see this. Um, and then also the opiates. And I can count on my one hand. I think in my entire addiction, probably blacked out twice. The rest was just
Wow.
I don't know why. Um, I would have half a bottle, 3 or 4 sleeping tablets, then go out,
Mm.
create complete chaos, uh, where I assume a lot of people would look at me and thinking, this guy's a mess, and then come home and then finish the rest, and then
Mm.
either pass out or just go to sleep. But I would have complete memory of the night before, except for 2 or 3 times, um, which which is sort of concerning. But yeah,
So now what led you to that moment where you decided or someone else decided to, how did that look like to get you into rehab? What was the big hurrah that was like, okay, I need to go or clean, whatever it was?
it's a bit embarrassing, but Oprah. Um, I I ran a small IT business at the time, so being aware that I need to get alcohol and whatever as soon as possible inside of me, I would sort of schedule my hours in such a way that I could get home at 3 or 3:30, and then I would literally just sit in front of the TV and watch Oprah and cry with Oprah. And there was an episode where she had I don't know if you know the actress Linda Hamilton that played in Terminator. Um, so she had bipolar disorder at that point in time, and two other actors that I don't recall, who sort of came out, which was very rare in those times, who came out with I have this problem, I have this problem. And I remember them going to the Betty Ford Clinic, right, which is sort of the default, at least from our perspective in South Africa, that was sort of, oh, the Betty Ford Clinic, yeah, we know that. And I was so ignorant or stupid, I guess, that I didn't even know rehabs existed in South Africa. But I realized I had to go to a place like that. So, but at that stage, I was still 23 and a half, maybe. I was managing a relationship. I don't know how I did it, because I had to constantly drink. So when I was with her, you find ways as an addict. You just find ways in order to hide things in strategic places so that you have access all the time. Um, and I remember I called my father and I said, "There's this place in America. I think it's in California. I'm not sure, but where all these people go to get better." And at first, it was sort of, look, we don't think you have a problem. They were in denial for a long time. They were in denial probably 10 years after I came out. They didn't really take it seriously, even after 10 years after I left rehab. But I continued down that road still doing what I was doing. And then eventually one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I called my mother and said, "You need to come fetch me. I think I'm dying." So they came through, they came and fetched me, and I went home, and then tried to get sober on my own, which was the dumbest idea ever. I mean, I would wake up the morning and would switch on the TV, and suddenly I would see the weirdest things. And
You
then I
went
would
cold
just,
turkey? Is that what did you like just
yeah,
stop?
because I was so uninformed, and no one
Mm,
really had an idea. So
mhm,
again, we'll get to that, but I'm very lucky in the sense that something remarkably worse didn't happen to me.
mhm,
Um, but I realized, okay, as soon as I started seeing these things, I was like, okay, no, I need to find a drink somewhere. And at
mm,
that point in time, they would hide the alcohol and hide the keys, but I would find them. An addict always has an ability to, I mean, you are just the best um, Sherlock Holmes in the moment when you're an addict as well. So, and then I would drink, and then they would come home after work, and be, I would be boastful. I would be like, so this key works for that door, and this key works for that door, and this is for
mm,
that. Um, Instead of just shutting up, because then they realized, okay, we have a problem on our hands. And the only thing that really, really saved me, I think, to this day, is from a very young age, I had probably a sort of a childish fantasy or ambition that I wanted to be a CEO of a large company earning a lot of money.
mm,
And that flame or that ambition never went away, even through my addiction. So
mm,
I would cry many nights because, well, I was drunk and high, but
mm,
also that ambition was still there.
Mm.
So when I finally told him, look, I need to go to America, um, my father said, okay, just go lie down and relax. And he came in 20 minutes later and said, call whoever you need to call. You're going in tomorrow. And typical addict was like, tomorrow? That's a bit quick. I was thinking more like next week. And he was like, nope, tomorrow. And
Mm.
again, I think this is a testimony to my ambition at the time. When we went there and we went to check in, it was my father, my mother, and myself. Um, my father said, we are here to check in a patient, and the receptionist said, okay, fill out these papers, and then asked him where the patient is. And I was standing right there. So we started laughing, all three of us, and she didn't quite understand. And I said, I'm the patient. And the poor woman blushed ridiculously and apologized profusely and said, look, you have to understand, there's only two ways that patients come through these doors, and
Mm.
it's by ambulance or by police escort.
Mm.
Um, and again, it absolutely had to do with that tiny flame of ambition, where I said, I'm here voluntarily. And
Mm.
I think that's why, um, I think, no, I don't think, I know for a fact that is why rehab took the first time, and
Mm.
I never had to look back after that. The only thing that I didn't foresee was that when I got clean and sober after 7 weeks and left rehab, that my life was going to
Mm.
become even worse
Mm.
than it was during the deepest addiction. I don't want to diminish my addiction. It was absolute hell.
Yeah.
But what followed the next 14 years was worse, when mental health
Mm.
decline just started destroying every fiber of my being.
Mm.
Um, and that's basically, I understand addiction, and I understand it very well, and I understand how crippling it can be, and I understand why people relapse. Um, but I also understand why I don't relapse and didn't relapse, because my intent was so clear and
Mm.
so focused on just getting better in order for me to achieve this childish dream, just for that dream to be shattered completely for the next, what was it, 14 years? Yeah.
14, 1
Um,
4. You're saying 14?
114,
Wow.
yes, 114, with
Wow.
major depressive disorders, social anxiety, generalized anxiety, hypochondria came back. What was the other thing?
Panic attacks?
Uh, oh, yes, plenty of them, and of course, suicidality was very frequent. It was just the most horrible time for
Mm.
me to be alive. I hated every minute of it. And that sort of childish ambition was still there, but it was waning pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, Especially as I gotten older. I sort of, you know,
Mm.
keeping a job became difficult, even though I'm
Mm.
relatively highly educated. Um, I struggle to get along with people.
Mm.
People read me differently. They think I'm a difficult person and I don't have a, sunshine personality or whatever. And I guess I didn't have it. I didn't. I hated my life. And I'm so embarrassed to admit that I've pursued relationships during that time as well. Never recklessly. It was always healthy long-term relationships. But I mean, I had no libido. I had no ambition, except
Mm.
for this kind of flame. I had no energy. Um, there's a psychiatric uh, phrase that I mentioned to a couple of psychiatrists, and they've never heard of it, but a few others have, which is called the disgust factor.
Mm.
So it's one thing to lose your libido, uh, where you can't perform
Mhm.
sexually at all. But the disgust factor was the most difficult thing because when I would
Mm.
think about touching my
Mm.
loved one or even giving her a hug or kissing her, just a peck
Mm.
would feel physically disgusting to me. So
Mm.
when we would watch a romantic movie and some sort of romantic scene would come up, it it, it would disgust me that much that I couldn't look at it. Um,
Mm.
luckily, fortunately for all of them, either I ended the relationship because I didn't want them to. I didn't want. I didn't want to hurt them by seeing me the way I am,
Mm.
which is a noble thing I did for a couple, and the rest obviously left because they didn't want to. They didn't know how to handle it, and fortunately, all of them. I make a joke these days when I speak to people. When I met my fiance last year, the year before, I made a joke and I said, "Look, if you really want to get married, date me for a couple of months and then break up with me." Because almost all of them, once they've broken up with me, the next person they met, they ended up marrying,
Mm.
and I'm so happy for them because I would have just
Mm.
destroyed their lives. So yeah, and during that time, I still, like I said, I had that childish CEO mentality thing. So I started working on a website that would merge addiction with mental health,
Mm.
which I couldn't find online. It didn't exist in 2009, so it was just websites. And I thought, oh, this is sort of one of a kind idea. And that's when I started uh, educating myself and learning about all of these, psychiatry and clinical trial data and stuff that's mostly inaccessible to the public, but I had ways to get it. Um, but that's basically when I started studying it in 2009, 2010. Because I didn't want to leave the house, and being behind a laptop was the most comfortable place I could be.
Mm.
So,
So at that,
so that
oh, go
mm.
ahead.
No. That's sort of where everything started.
So, okay, so at that point, you started doing some research, like looking at clinical, studies, trying to understand better addiction. Where exactly did that lead you for you to, it sounds like there was internal work that you did. Was there any realizations that you had through that journey of where this all started? And like, did that happen at all at that process?
Yeah. So the objective of the website was to be a online recovery for addiction and mental health, where you can take addiction on the road, meaning basically, if you boil it down, you don't have to attend meetings in the city that you stay in. As you move around, you can search for people in the area. It was sort of born out of the idea of a sponsor. So they recommend 3 things when you leave rehab, probably more, but 3 stuck at least. One is to do the 90 and 90, so 90 meetings in 90 days. I did that and never went to another meeting in my entire life. Don't tell anyone. One is to get a sponsor immediately, which I didn't do. And one is to become a sponsor after 2 or 3 years of sobriety, which I also didn't do. But the idea of the website was that if I live in Cape Town and I have a sponsor, the sponsor might be in Cape Town, but the sponsor might not be male, 29, recovering from alcohol and sleeping tablets and opioids, and he might not be suffering from major depressive disorder. So the idea of having a sponsor was, okay, I have a sponsor, but his recovery is off of heroin and mine's off of alcohol. There's a difference there. It's not the same. And to me, it was important to figure out a way, and I figured it out through a way by doing it on the internet, where you can literally, if you get critical mass, obviously, you can search for a sponsor that is, let's say now, 44 years old, male, suffered from alcoholism, prescription drugs, went through major depressive disorder, social anxiety disorder, hypochondria, and then do a search. And you can find someone that's almost exactly like you. And that person can be your sponsor because he knows exactly. And I'm saying he because I'm a guy. If it's a woman, it's also going to be a different dynamic. So I wanted to create a website where you can have these people come together and find the right people that can help you, and you have the ability to find the right people to help based on a certain level of criteria that you fill out when you register. It's much more complex, but I won't get into it. But that was sort of the idea. And that was sort of, I thought, at that time the internet was everything. So I thought, you still have this idea of becoming successful. If this hasn't been done and you can pull it off, that dream may very well still come true. So I looked up statistics for every single addiction, statistics for every single mental health condition, suicidal rates among all of the countries over the world, because it was not going to be a website just for South Africa. Addiction rates among all of the countries, relapse rates, re-entry into rehab. What is the average amount of times that people leave rehab, relapse, come back to rehab? What is the success rate of rehabs across the world in every different country? Astonishingly, it's very, very low, which is odd because if it was any other business, it would go under. I think at that stage it was something like a 10% success rate if you made it, if you remained sober after 5 years. I speak under correction, but I believe when you go to an AA or NA meeting, you obviously get your 30-day coin, you get your 90-day coin, you get a 6-month coin, you get a 1-year coin, and you get a 2-year coin, I think. It's
Mm.
more or less that. And I never paid attention to that much because, like I said, once I did my 90 and 90, I never went. So I just got not my, oh, you got a 90-day coin as well. I just got my 90-day coin and left. But now that I think about it, if you are handing out coins for sobriety, celebrating sobriety, and you are giving a coin to someone who's 2 years sober, right? People would people would stand up and applaud. It's crazy, and they should,
Mm.
rightly so, because it's an incredible
Mm.
milestone to reach. But then I thought, why do they stop at 2 years? Why not give one at 5 years?
Mm.
And then maybe something bigger at 10 years. And that's when I started to realize I've never been okay, I've only done the 90 and 90, but it's still 90 meetings and during rehab, quite a few. I've never seen anyone stand up because they ask you, is it anybody's birthday, which is sort of, your sobriety date. I never ever saw anyone stood up with more than 2 years of sobriety. And I thought to myself, why is that? And I remember sitting in a rehab in a meeting one day, and the sort of person who leads the meeting said, look to your right, look to your left. The person to your right and to your left is probably not going to be here next year. And I thought, well, this is my friend and this is my friend. Okay. But also, I need to keep in mind that my friend is also looking to his right, so he's looking at me. And I
Mhm.
was like, this is interesting, but also worrying. And I made a joke with someone the other day, and I said, if I have to go to an NA or AA meeting today, and they would ask, you go right. They go around the room. You
Mhm.
introduce yourself. My name's Henry. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I'm X amount of years clean. If I have to go to a meeting now and say my name's Henry, I'm an alcoholic and addict, I'm 19 years clean, I'm pretty sure everyone would have a stroke immediately
Mm.
and be like, what? Because
Mm.
it doesn't happen. And I understand exactly why. And that's why I started that thing, because I knew intrinsically that drugs and alcohol was never going to ruin my life again because of the way I entered and the
Mm.
reason I entered. Unbeknownst, I didn't know that mental health was going to absolutely ruin my life. But I mean, always, I was never afraid that I might get triggered or I might get
Mm.
what do they call it? A craving
Yeah.
for any. I never. I mean, they say don't, you're not supposed to frequent places you used to frequent. You need to get rid of the people that associated with you.
Mm.
I didn't. I still went to bars with my friends, but I had cool drink. I still go to restaurants with my fiance. She has wine. I, I it doesn't enter my mind. And I understand for most
Mm.
recovering addicts, that does not compute. So I should never speak to them in that manner,
Mm.
and assume that why is it so difficult? I know why it's
Mm.
difficult. But I also know why it was easier for me. And look, I thank my higher power, and I thank
Mm.
the fact that I had this stupid childish ambition
Mm.
to this day, uh, because if I had to relapse while going through those 14 years of mental health issues, there's absolutely no way I would have been here now. I,
Mm.
I, I, I couldn't have handled both. Definitely not. Um, So I'm very grateful, and I'm not ignorant to the fact that I am probably the luckiest addict
Mm,
alive because I don't have that problem, which then allows me to do what I do now
mm,
because I understand an addict, but I'm also of sober mind and clear faculty
mm,
of how it works and what people need to hear, what they don't need to hear, and in what way and in what method recovery should manifest.
mm.
And that's the easy part of my job. The more difficult part, obviously, is the mental health side. And I actually want to ask you a question if whenever there's time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you wanted to bring it up now, and then we could go to the next question.
Sure. So you ended up with bind, right? And
Mhm.
if I understood you correctly, it didn't happen immediately. Is it a delayed onset condition?
So, um, I was prescribed benzodiazepine for 6 months, and at the end of the 6 months, I was doing the ketamine IV, as that's what my doctor suggested, and that caused oversuggestion. I was forced to cut 50% of the benzo, and
Mm,
from that point, I was already injured. When I jumped
okay.
50%, I became injured, but I continued tapering. So that's called benzo withdrawal syndrome. So it's like I'm still protracted. I still have this injury, but I'm tapering. And then once I jumped off that last dose, like the symptoms, it's not like they were horrific, but I thought at the end of the 2 weeks, I thought there was going to be some type of miracle. Well, that wasn't what happened. That's when you enter into bind. So the drug is detoxed out of your body, it's coming out, but my neuroreceptors were so severely damaged. There's nothing in my body to help keep any of those neurotransmitters on.
Mm,
And I had like I mean, I actually did a neurotransmitter test recently. If I showed you the results, I mean, I'm 3 years in.
mm,
Let me put it this way. When my doctor saw it now, 3 years in, she's like, you should be dead. Like it
yeah.
was, my
Oh,
neurotransmitters are so severely damaged. And that's different than it's not, it's different than withdrawal. It's a brain
no,
injury,
no, no. Of course,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, of course. I thought it also had the possibility to be a delayed onset
Oh, it
condition.
could. You are correct that that could happen. That wasn't my case, but I see people. I saw a woman. She was 25 years on a benzodiazepine, tapered. She tapered for 2 years, jumped. She was fine. 6 months later, boom, she was in a wheelchair.
So that's one of the things that I learned from you and from watching your videos is that I count my blessings every day,
Mm,
but I've been through what you've been through. I mean, I probably took 50 times more than you did. I was just lucky. And then I thought to myself, hang on, it could still happen. I'm fine now, but it could still happen. So I need to be
you mean like in
the
your life, like right now, like this is from you're talking about taking the drug how many years ago, and you think that you're at risk now?
is it possible or not?
No, not at this
Okay.
point. Yeah, yeah,
All
you're
right, cool.
good. I just want to, you're
All
good.
right.
It's typically like, it's typically like what I've seen within the first year or so. I mean, there's people that take um a specific antibiotic called fluoroquinolones, which
Mhm.
are extraordinarily dangerous drugs, especially when you're taking a benzo, because it actually takes the binding spot on the receptor. So it detaches the benzo and you're going into immediate withdrawal. And like I believe my understanding is that there is no reattaching after that. You are going cold turkey.
No, yeah.
But my point is that with C-Pro or these antibiotics, it could, like I've seen people injured 2 years, 3 years later, they take another antibiotic that causes a trigger with the combination, and then they get floxed, which is a neurological condition similar to bind. But that's like the furthest I've ever heard of a drug.
Mm.
That's like, and that's 3 years, and that's the longest I ever heard, and that wasn't even that common. But yeah, I think you're good. I think you're good,
Okay.
Henry.
I wanted to ask you because you are in so much pain
Mm,
for such a prolonged period of time during the day and night.
yeah.
What do you take? And can you take anything? And I assume the answer is no.
No, I take nothing. I haven't put anything. So there was a point more in the like maybe the last year maybe the last 6 months I had started taking B. There was times started taking some D, glutathione. Like these are things that I've like baby introduced, and right now the only thing I'm putting in my body is the smallest dose of B. Like that's it. Nothing.
But it's not a painkiller.
No, I do not take no. And a lot of us can't. It's not just me. It's
No, of course, I get it.
also like now that I have done such deep research and understanding of how these drugs impact the brain, I would never, in my case, will never put any psychiatric drug in my body or anything that breaks like I won't even touch alcohol. I never had a thing with alcohol. I will never put alcohol because I understand it's a neurotoxin. What
Mm,
it does to the receptors in the brain and the body. Like I've walked the path of healing. Like I may not be physically healed, but my heart is healed, and I've done that
mm,
work. I'm at peace. So it's for many of us, we can't take a lot of things, and I want to be very sensitive to the listeners listening because I know so many of us are poly drugs. So it is. So many people get injured by the drugs, and the doctors put them on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and all of that. And I don't want to scare anyone. I think with time we heal, but it's important to try to avoid adding anything else into the picture because
mm.
what I have been educated and what I have read is like the way out is to do this as clean as possible, and we get there. And so I just want to say that for the listeners.
No, that's fine. My people were so scared the next day, and I said, everyone, just relax. She is pretty much an outlier. I mean, she got probably the worst deal of the lot, but let it serve you as a warning. Because at one time I was on 4 antidepressants at once,
Wow.
and an antipsychotic, and I didn't have bipolar or any
Yeah. Schizophrenia or any of that.
any psychosis, yeah, at all. Um, and it's insane. So ironically, that dream I had in 2009 about the website, I'm now finally rebuilding into a mobile app. So
So
I'm quite
this is what I
excited.
wanted to ask you. Is the website still active? Is it
It never got picked up because I needed funding
okay.
for the website to be built because it was so complex.
Yeah.
Uh, and I went to a bunch of people, and I couldn't get funding, so it was sort of benched. And then a few years later, I revisited the idea, and it got rejected again. And I
Mhm.
was like, how is this possible? How is no one seeing the health benefit? And I think the answer was that people aren't interested in this, unless they come from this and they have this experience. Finally, we are making progress. So hopefully soon we'll be able to launch that because it'll be geographic, AI driven moderation. It's a very complex app, but it would be like recovery in your pocket, and also it would be like instead of scrolling on TikTok for 3 hours, you might as well spend 3 hours on this app
Mm,
and help someone because you never know when you can save a
mm.
life. You never know.
No, I
So
agree with you. And it sounds like an awesome adventure, to be honest. And it also sounds like you finding purpose. If I had
that was a
understood, it's like for you, what took you out of, what took you kind of out of the depression. Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounded like you found purpose.
yes. So for 4.5 years ago, I guinea pig myself again. I do not advocate this at all. But I was tired of all of the medication. So I just started tapering off gradually. And when I realized, okay, this is giving me for instance, topical, uh that was the worst one. Um but I slowly tapered off all of the medication I was on, and it took me like 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I had this clarity, and I thought, okay, what do I do with this? My career in computer science is not really taking me anywhere. I'm not all that interested in it anymore. I love knowing the technology because it's going to help me with this
Yeah.
app, for example. Um, I also major in marketing, so that's going to help me, but I'm not happy.
Mm.
And not read about, probably Dr. Julie, the psychologist on TikTok. If you
Mm.
don't,
I don't
well,
think I
if you
do.
don't,
That's
she's hyper famous. Um, and I was like, well, start somewhere. Because my idea was I started the wrong way around. I wanted to launch the website, be famous, make a lot of money, instead of doing the groundwork and getting there eventually through credibility. If you go to a psychologist, you go to them with an idea in your head of what you want your life to be like. And then you tell that person, listen, this is what I
mm,
want my life to look like. I'm going to tell you my story once, and
mm,
then all I want to hear from your mouth is how we're going to get there.
mm,
I'm not going to repeat my story next week. I'm not going to dwell on the story every time because that seems to be the thing. Every week you talk about the same story and you never get past it because you keep reminding yourself of the
mm,
terrible situation you're in. I'm going to tell you my story once, and you're going to come with a solution on how to get me to that life that I want because that's your job. And the same with a psychiatrist.
mm,
This 15-minute, 20-minute visits uh, where they hardly listen to you and then just go through the DSM-5 and then like, yeah, okay, well, I'll see you in 6 months.
mm,
No, you are very expensive, okay? And I pay you. This is what I want my life to look like,
mm,
okay? With as little as possible medication. I pay you,
mm,
all right? And you can throw in a couple of curse words because that's what I did eventually.
mm,
This is what I want my life to look like. You make this happen,
mm.
okay? Because that's your job.
We hand this reverence to the white coat, but if you actually look at the history of how we got to this allopathic modalities to the white coat, where did if we go back, it's quite fascinating actually. I think what docu-series is quite interesting, Century of the Self, if I could recommend that to anyone, or Henry, you may enjoy that. But outside of that, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think that's the thing. It's like you go into a doctor's office and they're like, okay, you have these symptoms. Okay, I'm going to put you in this box because that's where I
Mm,
think you fit. And I'm going to prescribe you this drug that fits in this box. It is so mental health is so much more complex than a pen and a white paper and a box of drugs. And they're not even educated on these drugs.
mm.
I've seen over 60 doctors. I could tell you every single one I've seen has not been educated at all in the drugs that they're prescribing. So, and I think most people I speak to would agree with that same sentiment, not only in the US, but globally as well. But I think that's awesome. I think you found purpose in this arena, and I do wish you the best. I think this could be a really good place for us to end things. But before we end things, why don't you share with people where they can find you, your social media, or any of that?
Um, TikTok's pretty easy. It's my first name underscore surname. So HENRE underscore ROSSOUW. You might want to put it somewhere on the
I'm gonna
screen
put it in the
in
description
the
box.
description. And it's the same for my Facebook page is Mind Path to Purpose. So Path to Purpose is the name of the business. So
Mm,
facebook.com/mind path to purpose. YouTube, which is empty now, but will be, we are beginning to shoot episodes. is also youtube.com/mind path to purpose.
Mhm.
And Instagram at this point in time, I'm still dabbling in that, so I wouldn't recommend people to go, because it used to be my personal account. So, but TikTok and Facebook is probably the best place to go if you want to see how I approach things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm going to link everything below so everyone can find it easily. But Henry, thank you so much for being with us. I think
Thank
it's
you
so
for
much.
inviting me.
Yeah,
It's incredible feeling,
yeah,
must say.
absolutely. And I think just being so vulnerable and willing to share your story, that alone could help so many people see light at the end of the tunnel. Because as you know, when you're in it, it's so hard to see the light. And so
Yeah, yeah.
seeing warriors that walked before us and in specific people's journeys, like that's what we hold on to in so many ways. So I think your story is really important. So thank you